All right, so let's see. We got all the way through chapter 5, and then we left off at chapter 6. So I'm going to record the rest of it. That way we don't have to push into next week with this lecture. So chapter 6, item response theory, the new kid on the block. And you know I had to lean hard into this theme. So here you see new kids on the block. On the block presents item response theory. So I want you to think of item response theory as looking at individual items in a quiz or assessment. So think about it like an album has individual songs. Yeah. Okay. And so how they appeal to different fan base or whatever, right? So you got it, the right stuff, right? Hanging tough, step by step. Please don't go girl. And tonight, if you don't know these songs, you got other things you have to work on. Pause the video here, go look them up, listen to them. Please don't go girl. Got me through some sad nights, right? Like, and then step by step, hanging tough. Oh, you guys know it. You know it. Okay. So very similarly to an album and all the songs, item response theory is taking the assessment, looking at each individual item, right? So you see here, it can be referred to as modern test theory, the latent trait theory, or the strong true score theory. The big shift here is that it focuses away from the total test score and looks directly at these individual test items. And so we're investigating the precise mathematical, yay math, relationship between the item's difficulty level and a person's underlying ability. Okay. So this latent trait, all right. So in our field, the most important constructs we want to measure are often hidden from view. So we have the observed test score and then the latent trait that we want to measure, often hidden from view. So a latent trait and a hidden unobservable construct or underlying ability that's not directly explicit. This helps to measure that, right? So while IRT was developed for achievement test, we use ability to describe any measured construct, including personality traits and clinical anxiety. Psychometricians use patterns of responses across all items to estimate their true underlying score, okay, where their true score sits. So let's look at this, right? There's a clear paradox here between what we saw with classical test theory and this latent, okay? So think about a 3-item depression screening tool. So you've got this guy, and he scores sadness. He says, yes, 1 point. No pleasure? Yes, 1 point. Self-harm? No. So his total score is a 2. Then you give it to this beautiful woman here, and she says, sadness? No. No pleasure? Yeah. Self-harm? Yeah. So her total score is also a 2. And you got to stop for a second here. So in classical test theory, the way that we just reviewed, these two clients are going to look identical. We're just looking at the total score. He got a 2, she got a 2. But as a clinician, like, this is 2 different answers on the depression screening tool. Like, if you are actively self-harming, right, that's different than I'm sad and I have no pleasure, right? So that means that we would see, we would have to change the treatment plan to accommodate that, right? So it would change our treatment planning. So it's important that we have these. Okay, so to understand these modern psychometrics here, I showed you this image. So the item characteristic curve for one item. All right, so let's look at the axes, right? The X and the Y. So with the X, the horizontal, like the horizon, you look over the horizon, right? The horizontal, it represents the underlying trait or ability, which is called the theta, right? That's the value. And then the vertical axis is the Y, right? And that's representing here, you see the probability that the person is going to get that item correct, okay? So you see it goes from 0 to 0.5 to 1. Or you could make that into a percentage and say no percent, about 50%, 100%. Okay, so you see how it changes as it moves across. So this curve right here illustrates how the probability of the item's success is directly related. So as the probability increases, a person's underlying trait level then increases. Okay. So these, they have 3 different characteristics that help you to understand the curve. A, B, and C. A is the discrimination level. B is the difficulty level. And C is what is the chance that they can guess and get the answers right. Okay, so we're going to break these down in full NKOTB style, right? So in your book, it called Figure 3, right, talked about the A parameter. So the item discrimination. So it is reflected by how steep, right, the slope of the characteristic curve. So here you see the charm bracelet made out of gold has a less of a steep slope, whereas the glow-in-the-dark one has a pretty steep slope. So that steep slope is staying near that ability of -2 and 2, whereas the longer one is representing much greater area of ability. So steep curves, you have a high A. Strong discrimination power, small changes in ability will cause big shifts in their success probability. Okay, so it means, right, a steep curve means that a small increase in a client's underlying symptom level can noticeably change the probability of it endorsing that item, right? Saying that that item is, the probability is going to change on that item. Okay, if the curve is flat and there's a low A, then it doesn't do a good job of discriminating. Okay, that item is essentially useless because individuals, say, with high anxiety, right, and low anxiety have the same chance of answering that question the same way. So we want to see a nice, long, strong discrimination to help you discriminate between the people that take it, right, and their answers. Next, we have the item difficulty, which is the B parameter. And so again, on the X and the Y, you're going to see it the same exact thing. The theta on the horizon, the horizontal, the X, and the probability on the Y, the vertical. Okay. So the parameter B, the specific theta value. So now we're looking at that X, where a person has exactly a 50% chance of passing the item. So if you look at the middle, right, we want to see where that S curve is crossing the 50%. Now, looking at that, we can determine what the difficulty level is of that item. Okay, so you see easy, low item is going to be on the left, hard item is going to be on the right. So far left, easy items, right is harder items. Okay. And then curve shift far to the right represent hard items. It requires high ability to answer correctly if you're on that side. All right. And then we have the guessing parameter, so the C parameter. So this is the probability that a low ability individual will guess correctly, purely by guessing. So if you take a multiple choice exam with 4 options, you have a baseline 25% chance of getting an item right. Okay, even if you know absolutely nothing about the topic, right? You can guess, right? Baseline is 25%. It's 100% if you know, there's 4 items, 100%. You can divide it. There's 4 items, 100. It's 25%, 25 plus 25 plus 25. Too much math. I might be losing you. But 25% chance you're going to guess that right. Okay. IRT math, there was a whole section in there about IRT math and the software and stuff like that. Don't worry about that. Let that go in and then let that out. That's not going to be on your exam. But that factors that in, right? Like, this is the baseline. So that factors it in to take the tail of the curve off the floor, making sure that random guesses don't accidentally trick the system into thinking a client has a higher level of ability. So what does all of this look like? It looks like this. Computerized adaptive testing. Okay, so if you took the GRE or the SAT, there is computerized adaptive testing software inside of it. So that software consistently, continuously updated its estimate of your ability as you're taking each single question. So you take a question and it would know where you are on that difficulty level. And then it gives you another question related to that, right? So it gets progressively harder or easier, right? Scaffolds the questions, whatever. So if you miss the item, the computer will then will give you easier questions to try and narrow down your exact threshold of knowledge of that topic. Okay. So that's why, like, if you take the GRE and you started at the same time as somebody else, you could finish at completely different times and have seen completely different questions, right? Because this computerized adaptive testing system. All right. So that's everything that you need to know from chapter 6. It's not all encompassing. That's why I paired it, or not too overwhelming. That's why I paired it with chapter 5. So I will send this or download this and upload it to your modules so you can watch this at your leisure. I don't know. If you have any questions about this, you can always email me, you can text me, reach out to me however you need to, and I'll go over it just in case you have any questions. All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. I will see you next week, and keep killing it. Y'all are cooking. You're leaving no crumb. I'm tired. Okay. Good night, y'all.